Evacuation, the result of pre-planning, training, and in-service education. An evacuation such as this does not simply happen. It happens because of emergency situations. Hospital patients and those in patient care facilities, in most cases, depend on you for their lives in an emergency. Experience proves that adequate training and practice result in knowledge retained during a crisis, while book-learned procedures may be forgotten. A procedure plan can be excellent in theory, yet completely ineffective in an emergency if it has never been rehearsed and drilled. There is no substitute for training and drilling in effecting a set course of action to be used in a time of disaster. Fire department files can illustrate numerous cases where loss of life and property damage could have been minimized had the institution personnel been trained in emergency procedures. The purpose of training and drilling is to condition you to react instinctively and effectively to a given emergency situation.
Good morning. My name is Deputy Chief Ranke. We in the fire service know well the meaning and advantages of pre-planning. This is why we strongly feel that all hospital personnel and those working in nursing homes and institutions must be involved in pre-planning for any emergency in an institution, for the relocation of patients, and for the possibility of an evacuation. We are together this morning to train and practice methods of moving patients to safety. First, we must discuss several important topics that are necessary for a successful evacuation. We are looking at the third floor of your building. You must know where the exits are in your respective working areas. The stairways will serve as your vertical access point, and the smoke barrier doors will be your horizontal evacuation separations. You must know where the fire alarm station is, the location of fire extinguishers and standpipe hose lines, an area where the patients may be moved to, in the event of an evacuation or relocation, as it will be in most cases. In the event of a fire or emergency, the following order of action is recommended. First, remove any patient in immediate danger. Second, sound the fire alarm to alert the fire department and the staff. This is second only to the rescue of patients in immediate danger. Third, close all doors, fire and smoke barrier doors, doors to patient, treatment, and utility rooms. Fourth, extinguish the fire if possible. Fifth, begin relocation of patients and prepare for evacuation if necessary. Last, reassure all patients. The following order of removal for patients is suggested. Those in immediate danger, all ambulatory patients under supervision, bed patients close to danger area, bed patients connected to life-saving devices who must be removed in their beds. You will have to pre-plan for each type of patient. Vertical or horizontal movement will depend on the type of building and emergency situation. It must be remembered that horizontal evacuation in a high-rise building can only be used when a patient can be taken to an area which is protected by fire or smoke barrier doors, or through a corridor to an adjacent building protected by an approved fire separation. If this is not possible, then vertical evacuation will be necessary by use of stairways and fire escapes. In the event of an emergency occurring in the evening or early morning hours, there will be less help because auxiliary personnel are not available. This must be considered in your emergency plan. Your institution's fire brigade is most important because it will help carry the workload until the fire department arrives. There is one more thing I would like to call to your attention. There is no one set plan for an emergency in a patient care facility. It will depend on the type of emergency, but training, pre-planning, and knowing how to handle patients in the event of an emergency will make the job that much easier for you and the staff. The universal carry is a method of removing a patient from the bed onto a blanket on the floor. It is a quick and effective method for removing a patient who is in immediate danger. This carry can be used by anyone, regardless of the size of the patient. When you approach the bed, stay low, because if there is a smoke condition, the smoke will have a tendency to rise. By staying close to the floor, you will not have to breathe the smoke and heat. Now spread the blanket, sheet, or spread on the floor. Place 1/3 of the blanket under the bed. Leave about 8 inches above the patient's head. Grasp the patient's ankles and move the legs until they drop over the bed at the bend in the knees. Place your hands on each shoulder of the patient. Slowly pull your hands toward you until the patient is in a sitting position. Encircle the patient with your arms. Place your arms underneath the patient's armpits and lock your hands together in front of him. Slide the patient slowly to the side of the bed and lower to the blanket. If the bed is in a high position, allow the patient to slide down one of your legs. Always protect the patient's head. Gently lower the head to the blanket. Wrap the blanket around the patient. At the patient's head, grip the blanket with your hands above each shoulder. Do not let the head snap back. Place the patient in a half-sitting position and pull the blanket toward you. The blanket will slide easily on the floor, allowing you to move the patient to safety. The cradle drop is a patient removal that may be used with success, providing that you are similar or larger in size than the patient. With the blanket on the floor, 1/3 of it under the bed, slide one arm under the patient's head and grasp the opposite shoulder. Position your other arm under the patient's legs at a point midway between their knees and body. Pull the patient to the edge of the bed. Do not jerk the patient out into midair, but gently pull him toward you by rocking back into a sitting position and lowering to the blanket. Protect the patient's head by lowering this part to the blanket last. Wrap the blanket around the patient. Grasp the blanket above each shoulder of the patient. Do not let the head snap back. Place the patient in a half-sitting position and pull the blanket toward you. The double cradle drop is recommended for 2 rescuers to use on patients who cannot sit up or where one person cannot handle the patient. With the blanket on the floor, 1/3 of it under the bed. A, you handle the top half of the patient. B, you handle the bottom. A, slide your arm under the patient's head and grasp the opposite shoulder. Your other arm goes completely under the body at the waistline. B, slide your arms under the legs on both sides of the knee and extend through to support this half firmly. Don't jerk the patient out into midair, but together, gently pull her toward you by rocking back into a sitting position and lowering to the blanket. Protect the patient's head by lowering this part to the blanket last. Wrap the blanket around the patient. Together, move to the patient's head and grasp the blanket above the shoulders. Do not let the head snap back. Leave the patient in a prone position and pull the blanket toward you. The universal carry, the cradle drop, and double cradle drop are designed so that you are always lowering the patient. Therefore, you do not require great strength. If vertical evacuation is necessary by going down either interior stairways or outside fire escapes, in most cases, a helpless patient may be taken downstairs by one person. With the patient wrapped in a blanket, drag him head first in a half-sitting position to the top of the stairs. It is most important that the blanket be wrapped tightly to protect the patient. It will make the descent easier. You take a position on the stairs, 1, 2, or more steps lower than the patient. This position will vary depending on the height of the patient and yourself. Place your arms under his armpits and join hands in front of him. Back slowly down the stairs, maintaining close contact at all times with one of your legs against his back. The patient's lower body will be on an incline with the stairs. In this position, it is easy to move the patient. The swing carry is the best method for two trained people to move a patient. No blanket is needed. If the patient is lying in bed, there are different actions to know, which are dependent upon the position you take. To clarify this, the upper part of the body will be A and the lower part B. B, grasp the ankles and move legs off the bed. A, face the patient and place your hands on each shoulder. Pull your hands toward you until the patient is in a sitting position. After she is sitting up, continue to move the legs out until they are at a right angle to the bed. Sit on the bed, take the patient's arm, place it over your shoulder. Join arms in back of the patient. Do not hold on to the patient, just each other. Place your shoulder under the patient's armpit. Join your hands like this, under the patient's knees. Together, lift the patient and walk forward in a normal manner. The patient may be lowered feet first when an area of safety is reached. Remember, always protect the head. The swing carry is a method of moving a patient that the nursing staff can use in their normal routine of handling patients. If someone has a cast on the lower part of his body, the extremity carry can be used on most patients, provided they are able to be placed in a sitting position. Again, two trained persons may employ this method with success. Each person has special moves to complete, so we shall refer to the upper body as A and the lower B. A, place your hands on each shoulder of the patient. Pull the patient slowly into a sitting position. B, take the patient's ankles and move the legs until one is clear of the bed. If moved further, it will be difficult for your partner to get his hold on the patient. B, simply back in between the patient's legs, far enough to grasp the ankles. Place your hands to the outside of the legs, allowing your thumbs to stay on top. A, move to the rear of the patient. Encircle him with your arms. Place your arms underneath his armpits, locked together in front. Slide the patient to the edge of the bed and maintain close contact. When in position, A, give the signal to move out. Together, gently pull the patient forward, carry him to safety by walking in a normal way. B, it is most important that you keep your arms straight down when carrying the patient. Emotionally disturbed patients who are not ambulatory present a special evacuation problem. The chairlift is a method that requires a straight back chair and one or two rescuers. With the patient in a chair and the absence of restraining straps, use a bed sheet to anchor the patient to the chair. The bed sheet encircles the patient about chest high, and you tie it in back of the chair. The knot is simple, similar to the knot you use in starting to tie your shoelace. Now, tuck the loose end of the sheet between the patient's body and the sheet around him. For two people, you're A, you face the chair in the rear of the patient. B, you take a position in front of the chair. Face forward. A, put your foot against the chair and tilt toward you. B, you stoop down and grasp each side of the front legs. Now lift the chair together and walk. If you are alone, tilt the chair toward you and back out. Many people in patient care facilities are medically classified as able to walk. Unfortunately, this description of a patient's physical condition is not true in an emergency situation. For instance, an elderly person may be able to walk at a very slow shuffle, but in any emergency, this type of patient will need assistance to be moved quickly. In the side assist hold, you approach the standing patient from the side. Take her arm and place it in back of you. Pull the patient's arm with your hand that is opposite the patient until her body is tight against you. You hold her arm securely at all times. You encircle the patient's body with your other arm and take her forearm. The patient will feel secure in your grasp and may be controlled very easily. As you can see, the patient cannot fall forward or backward. If the exit path is narrow or the patient is disturbed emotionally, it may be to your advantage to use the bear hug assist on the patient. Approach the standing patient from the rear. Place your hands between the patient's body and arms. Take hold of the wrists. Keep your hands on top, your thumbs to the inside. Fold your arms to encircle the patient around the chest. Your arms will now be in the bear hug position. The patient may be moved forward by you in a confident manner. Most important is that you keep your head to one side of the patient's head so she cannot you. For removal of infants, I suggest the following procedure. With a blanket or sheet on the floor, place 2 babies in each bassinet. Use diapers or small blankets for padding. 4 bassinets can be placed in the middle of a blanket or a sheet. First, fold the blanket over one end. Fold the corners in. Then roll the sides in to form a pocket. Together, grasp the corners and pull the blanket. 2 people can drag 8 babies to safety. If necessary, 1 person can do the job. In an emergency, where you have children in cribs, and it becomes necessary to relocate them, place as many as possible in one crib and move them to safety. I would like to call to your attention the carries or methods of removal that we have just finished are for use in all hospitals, nursing homes, and mental care facilities. These are simplified methods designed for anyone working on the staff who may be called upon in an emergency. You have noticed that the methods of removal that we've discussed and practiced are designed for 1 or 2 rescuers, because in many instances, the initial response in the first several minutes may be only a few people. There are other acceptable methods of removal of patients, but time does not permit us to discuss them. We feel that the carries discussed and practiced today will cover most situations you may face.
These patients are your responsibility. They depend on you for many different services during their stay in a hospital, nursing home, or mental institution. But in an emergency, their very lives may depend on each one of you, your instinct, your training, your ability to carry out an evacuation. Everyone who works in a patient care facility has 2 responsibilities. The first is to his profession, whether he is the administrator or director, doctor, nurse, nurse's aide, volunteer, technician, maintenance worker, housekeeper, or dietitian. But in time of disaster, everybody has one responsibility: the safety of the patients and their removal to safety. Can you afford to gamble with the possibility of fire? Have you ever said to yourself, I've been here for years and we've never had a fire? And this is a new building, it is brick and concrete, it can't burn. How familiar these statements are. But if these are your thoughts, you may be tragically wrong. All too often, an apathetic attitude is taken toward fire safety. Many people believe that it can't happen here. But it does happen every day. How well prepared are you in case of fire?